It's entirely a movement-based program. So we're going to be working on managing our back pain with the foam roller. Before we get started, I want to highlight the fact that everyone's backs are different. Everyone is dealing with something a little bit different. So I encourage you guys to listen to your body, and that's how you will get the most out of this workout. I do offer a number of modifications as well as a couple of challenges. So please take them at the time that feels best for your body. And if something really doesn't feel right, you can always take a rest and hop back in. There's nothing we do today should be super painful or put your body into more pain. So with that being said, we're going to get started back onto the mat and bring your foam roller with you. Let me just tip my camera down a tiny bit so you guys have a good view here. Okay. And I'm going to lie my roller perpendicular along the length of my mat, and then bend my knees, putting my feet on the opposite side of the roller. From here, we're going to lie down onto your back and just find a comfortable position to rest down. And we're actually going to start with the roller under our sacrum. Our sacrum is the bone that's in between our tailbone and our low back. So it's a flat bone as a part of our pelvis. And when we lift up and place our sacrum rather, on the roller, it should feel fairly comfortable. And if it doesn't, you can always adjust to the point where it feels more comfortable for your body. So just take a moment and settle in and let your body relax here. I like to start these foam roller classes in this position because it is decompressive for our spine. If you were in my sciatica class earlier today, you may have already heard me talk about how decompressing our spine by lifting our hips higher than our chest helps to take some pressure off of our back that we get just from gravity during the day. So we'll lie here, focusing in on our breathing, letting our rib cage open up and expand. And as we exhale, feeling our rib cage narrow in. You can imagine your trunk cavity here like a balloon. As you inhale, you're inflating that balloon. And as you exhale, you feel the air coming out of that balloon. And we practice our breathing because, of course, our breath is controlled by our diaphragm, which plays a big role in how our abdominal muscles are able to fire, which protects our back. So we'll try 2 more big breaths here, inflating that balloon and letting it go. Good, and one more time here, and let it go. So from here, place your hands on top of your roller. So you're gonna hold the roller. This is just to kind of keep it in place, and then slowly lift your legs up off the floor. You may feel comfortable just keeping your legs bent like this, but if you're able, try straightening your legs up towards the ceiling. And they don't have to be all the way straight. But one thing I like to try in this position is to also help blood flow. That, when we sit, sometimes we can get blood that pulls down into our lower legs, to return that blood flow back to our heart. So very gently, we can practice pointing and flexing our feet here, just getting a little stretch into the back of our legs. You can even practice bending and straightening your legs here, feeling a little stretch through the back of your hamstrings. And this is just a nice way, without any compression to our spine, to start to stretch the back of our legs. And it's different than stretching down on the floor, where we do have some compression to our back because of gravity. So what we'll do now is go ahead and stretch the legs up, and gently you can allow your legs to open and then bring the legs back together. So this is just to help start to get into some of those inner thigh muscles. I often find that when we try and stretch the inner thigh muscles in standing, you may feel pressure or pain on the inside of your knee because of the weight of your body. So by doing this stretch up in this weightless position with your legs, you can get a nice stretch to the inner thighs without a lot of stress to the knee. And the muscles along our inner thighs do actually control how our hips rotate, which also plays a role in how our back is able to rotate. So we'll try just 2 more like this. Excellent here, guys. And one more time. Good. From here, we're going to bend our left knee in towards our chest. This time you can hold your knee with both hands, and you're going to lower your right leg down to the floor. And this should really open up the front of your right hip, so your hip flexor. We're actually going to foam roll our hip flexors today, but we'll start by just feeling a stretch. And if you do not feel a stretch in your right leg, you're going to bring your right foot closer to the middle of your body, pulling the left knee in towards your chest and pushing your right heel down towards the floor. And this should just feel like a stretch. If it's painful or sharp, modify your range of motion. You don't have to go quite as deep, or maybe bend your knee a little bit on that right side. So we'll hold this for just another breath here. And then go ahead and switch by pulling your right knee in towards your chest, hugging that knee with both hands, and stretching your left leg out long. And again, you can bring your left leg more to the midline of your body. You can draw your rib cage down, pull the right knee in a little bit closer towards your chest to deepen that stretch across the front of your hip. And we're just sort of taking advantage of the shape of the roller to really open the front of our hip. And our hip flexor muscle, it actually attaches to our lower back. So it can be one that when it's really tight, may be modifying how our back is able to move. Good, so we'll take another breath here. And then very carefully bending your knee, placing both feet down. We're gonna lift our hips up and press the roller out, and just take a moment to let your back rest down on the floor. Good. Okay, now from here, once your back feels settled, we're gonna roll to the side and bring that roller behind us, still perpendicular to the mat, so we can start to roll into our upper back. And so this is a class really focusing more on our lower back, but the flexibility of our upper back actually connects to how our lower back feels. So what we'll do is hold the roller with your hands. You're gonna lie down so that your shoulder blades are just on top of the roller, and then hold your head with your hands. Now, if you have a hooded sweatshirt or longer hair, you want to hold your hair or your sweatshirt out of the way, otherwise that can get stuck. And go ahead and bend your knees. From here, keep your elbows in your peripheral vision so that your head is supported. Your neck should be totally relaxed. And then lift your bottom up. And you're going to roll from the very base of your neck down to just below your shoulder blades. So you don't have to go much lower than that. We're going to focus in here on the upper back only. So when you're rolling, you should be rolling along the length of your rib cage. And your rib cage goes right from the base of your neck all the way down to below your shoulder blades. And in this rolling movement to start, this is sort of a way to assess where the tight spots in your back are. So you might feel certain spots feel stiffer than the other. Maybe the whole thing feels stiff. Maybe it's even a little bit of tightness in the muscles that run along your spine. So if, as you're rolling here, you find one spot that's a little bit tighter than the other, go ahead and pause on that spot, place your bottom down, and drop your spine over the shape of the roller. Now, when you drop back, two things to watch out for here. The first is that it's not just your neck dropping back. Our necks are already quite flexible. You want the arch to come from your back. So keep your eyes on your knees. That way we know your neck stays in a safe position. The other thing is to watch if your front rib cage lifts up to the ceiling. You want to make sure your rib cage stays down as though it's connected to your hip joint with a little suspender. That is going to protect your lower back and make sure that the stretch stays in your upper back. And it may mean that you can't go quite as far over the roller. That's actually okay, as long as you can focus that stretch right to the spot that needs it, right in your upper back. And you can go ahead and adjust spots by rolling and trying that same thing. Now you have the option here to sort of let yourself drape over the roller and lift up, almost like you're doing a little crunch. You can also drape yourself over the roller and hold it. And while you hold it there, try taking deep, expansive breaths, just like we did in the beginning of class, where you're filling your rib cage up like a balloon. And because we're stretching our upper back connects to our rib cage, you can get a deeper stretch. And you may actually feel some cracking or popping, and that's not a bad thing. So we're going to go back into that rolling here. But this time add in some dimensions of movement. So I'd like you to try and tip your right elbow towards your right hip. And that's going to bend your spine to the right and open up the left side of your spine. So you can roll and just notice how that feels different. You can do the same thing going to the left, where you bring your left elbow towards your left hip to open up your right side body. And just notice how that feels. And again, there's no right or wrong with this pattern here. Just notice it. See if you can find the side that's a little bit tighter on your spine and maybe spend a moment or two extra there. You can also add in the dimension of rotation, which looks like tipping one elbow up to the ceiling and one elbow down towards the floor. And that's going to bring you into your lat muscle. And our lats are shoulder muscles. They also connect down to our lower back. And so you can try both sides, see how that feels. Maybe you need to spend an extra moment or two on one side because it's a little bit tighter than the other. And I've had some awesome questions in this class before about symmetry, whether or not you have to do the same amount of time on each side. And the answer is definitely no, because if one side is tighter than the other, it may help you to become more symmetrical if you spend a little bit more time on that side. So that is totally fine. And that's how you can make this class personalized for you, is just to notice where your body needs the most attention. And again, you can always come back to placing your hips down and draping your spine over the shape of the roller. Good. We'll try 2 more times just like that. And last time here. Good. And then carefully come to a seated position. Nice work there, guys. So you can certainly go back and spend more time on your upper back. I want to get through a bunch of things for this class, but just to show you guys the technique of how to do that. Another way we can tie in some of that upper back stretch and length is by now lying down onto our stomach with the roller out in front of us. And so what this will look like here is placing your hands on top of the roller. Now, if you have shoulder sensitivity, I recommend keeping your elbows bent. If your shoulders are okay with a big stretch, I would recommend starting with the roller as far away from you as you can. What you'll do is now press your hands down into the roller and start to lift your chest. If you're starting with bent elbows, it looks the same, pushing into the roller and rolling back down. So you're pulling the roller towards you to lift up your back. And you can keep your arms fully extended or elbows bent. And work within what's comfortable for your spine. It may be just your upper back. So you may be doing a small range of motion here. You may also feel more comfortable coming up into a full spine extension, lifting into your upper back. So try a few more here. Beautiful, guys. And one more time, just like that. And melt all the way down. Good. You can take your hands off the roller and sit yourself up and back. Just find a gentle child's pose shell stretch where you press your chest down, sitting your hips back over your heels. And if your knees are not able to tolerate this, you can certainly have less bend in your knees and still do the same stretch. So we're going to actually keep the roller positioned this way while we're sort of down on our stomachs to get into our hip flexor. Before we set up for this, our hip flexor, I like to just show, is a muscle that comes from below our knee all the way, and it attaches through our stomach to our lower back. The zone I want to focus in on is this part of our hip flexor that crosses the hip joint. So really from the top, the bony part of your pelvis, down to just below your pelvis onto your femur bone. So we're gonna go one side at a time. And to show you guys, I'm gonna start on my left side. So what that will look like is lining up sort of the crease of your hip on the left side. You're gonna be tipped slightly to the side that you're trying to roll on. And then I like to bend the opposite knee for some support. So I could kind of hang out here. I feel pressure down into the front of my hip, but I have some support from my outside leg. So I like to just start like this, feeling the pressure. You don't want to be right on the bone of your hip. It should be more on the meaty part of the muscle. Once you have found that, you can lower your other forearm down and start to roll back and forth. So I'm rolling more to my left side, just above the bony part of my hip. It may even feel like you're going a little bit into your stomach, and that's why it's helpful to be tipped to the side so it's not the more central component of your stomach, and you should feel some of the muscles across the front of your hip. Very gently, you can roll past that a little bit by walking your elbows forward. You can also use that knee that is bent to give you a little bit of support and control here. And so you have the option to sort of just roll across the muscle, front to back. If you find one spot in particular that's quite tight or a little bit sore, you can pause and hold your body weight over that spot and just try and breathe. And I think usually you hold anywhere from 20 to 30 seconds, you should feel a relieving sense of that tightness. So we'll continue to keep our head lifted, try and keep your shoulders down away from your ears, still using good body mechanics here. And like I mentioned in the beginning of class when we were stretching our hip flexor muscle attaches to our low back. So this can be one that is sensitive, but it is good to address. Now we're going to try to switch to the other side. So I'm going to shift my body slightly to the right, bend my left knee for support, and then roll in and out of the front of our thigh right over the front of our hip. And if you feel the bony part of the side of your pelvis, make sure that you're rolling right up to the top of that bone and then down onto the femur. This is a deep muscle, so it may not feel quite the same as, say, when we foam roll our calves, which we'll get into in just a moment. But this can be a nice stretch to get into those back muscles. So we'll go for just another 20 seconds or so on this side. Again, set your shoulder position in a safe way by pushing your elbows down into the mat, maybe pausing and holding a particular spot, letting your breath be comfortable. Good. And then we'll come all the way on up, taking a little rest. Nice work, guys. So we're going to get the muscles now on the back side of our hips, which is our glute muscles. And I like everybody maybe to take a moment and feel the back of your hip. So if you were to say, let's say, put your hands on your hips, feel the bone on the back of your hips, and then walk your fingers maybe an inch or two below that bone. And you should feel that there's it's a thin muscle, but there is a muscle there. That is called the glute medius muscle, which is one that plays a big role in balancing our back. So I want you to just notice that muscle in this position. We're going to try and get to that when we're on the foam roller. So we'll start by holding the roller still. I'm going to do my left hip first. So I will sit down on the left side of my hip, right on top of the roller, place my left hand back behind me, and then I like to keep both knees bent down on the floor and just start to roll over the muscles in the back of my hip. One thing to notice here is that on the side of your hip, there's a big bone called the greater trochanter. It's a part of our femur. That bone has a bursa on top of it, and it does not like to be rolled over. So if you're really, really tipped sideways and you feel yourself rolling over a big bone and it's uncomfortable, back off a little bit, try and stay more on the muscle. So you can roll on the muscle down low towards the bottom of your hip, but I want you guys to try today to roll up a little bit higher onto that muscle, the glute medius that we just felt on our pelvis. And so that one, it is a very thin muscle. You can take some of the body weight off if it feels like too much pressure by pushing into your left foot and left arm at the same time, and gently roll along the length of those muscles. I'm still biased towards my left side so that I can focus in on my left side hip muscles right now. Now, if this does not feel like enough pressure, you can cross your right ankle on top of your left thigh. For me, that's too much. I'm going to keep both legs down, but very gently rolling from the length all the way down to the bottom of our hip, and then up, making sure you get to that little glute med muscle right at the top of our pelvis. You can rotate a little bit more to the side or sort of orient yourself more up towards the center. So different people are going to be tight in different zones. Today, I'm noticing I'm more tight when I face up towards the ceiling. So I'm going to spend just an extra moment or two there. And then we'll go ahead and switch over to the right side. So now I'll place my right hand down on the floor. I'm going to turn my body to the right and just start to roll back and forth over the glute muscles. Now, I haven't even gotten into this class. Why are we focusing on our hips here? A lot of the nerves that exit our back run through our glute muscles. So they may be tight in response to any nerve sensitivity. On top of that, our glute muscles also support our spine when we're walking, when we're bending over, and when we're squatting. And so keeping these muscles nice and flexible so they're able to fire well when we need them is important to providing support for our back. So once again, make sure that you're rolling right up to that bony part of your pelvis and then down low. You have the option here to cross your left ankle on top of your left thigh if you feel like you need that. So nice and easy in here. You can pause and hold, or you can continue to roll back and forth over that zone. Good, and we'll just spend another moment here. And then we'll come back through the center. Nice work, guys. We'll try one more thing in this setup. So I'm going to just sit down on my mat, bring my roller underneath my calves. I like to focus in on the calves for today because our calf muscles are the very first shock absorbing muscle when our feet strike the ground. And so our ability to use our calf muscles and to have them work as a shock absorber takes away any additional shock absorbing that our hips or even our low back has to do when we're walking, and certainly when we're running. So we'll place the roller underneath our calves, hands about 6 to 8 inches behind your bottom. If you have wrist sensitivity, you can actually do this on your forearms. It's a little bit more work, but that is possible. Otherwise, come up onto your wrist. You're going to lift your bottom up, rolling to the bottom of your calves down by your ankles, and then rolling right up to the base of the back of your knee. This also doubles, I'm sure as you can feel here, as a little abdominal exercise. So it is some work to keep your hips lifted. And I like to imagine that I'm threading my bottom through my arms and then pressing my bottom up to the ceiling. Now, this is working both sides at the same time. If you want to focus on one side, cross one ankle, let's say my right ankle on top of my left, and then I can focus in on my left calf. So if you're finding that one is much tighter than the other, you may want to spend a little bit more time on that side on its own. You can also, with both legs down, rotate your hips to one side to get the outside or the inside part of your calf, and vice versa to the other side. So we'll spend just a few minutes here. You can always place your bottom down if your arms need a break, or try that version down on your forearms, which looks a little bit different, and it is a little bit more work for your shoulders, but it may be safer for your wrists if needed. Good. And we'll spend just another moment here. Excellent, guys. Good. And then place your bottom down. Okay. So for our last part of class, we're going to use the length of our roller. So if you have a shorter roller, this is where you'll need to modify a little bit. What we'll do is turn the roller lengthwise on our mat, and I'm actually going to lie my spine down along the length of the roller. So if you have a shorter roller, I'd like you to try and get at least your head and your upper back on the roller. The easiest way to get on is to sit on the end of your roller and then walk your hands back until you are lying down along the shape of your roller. If yours is shorter and you don't have anything under your hips, you can just use your legs to keep your hips lifted, or perhaps try putting a pillow or something underneath your hips. So once you're in this position, just let your spine get settled. And it can be some really good feedback. I kind of like to imagine it's as though I'm standing up against a wall. So I can really feel the heaviness of my head, my rib cage, and my tailbone on the mat or against that wall. And you can imagine that this is the most straight, tallest standing posture you've ever had. So this is a nice reminder, a nice reset of what that nice stacked spine would look like. So we're going to play around a little bit here with balance. So bring the tips of your fingers down onto your mat, just the tips of your fingers, so not the back of your arms, and try just lifting one leg up at a time. And I want you to notice if maybe it's trickier or you feel really wobbly, lifting one leg compared to the other. And this really is the same movement pattern that you might experience with walking. So if you can imagine, once we do this much faster up in a standing position, how much movement occurs in our back during walking. Now, if this is feeling really easy for you, go ahead and lift both legs up. Just get your center. Maybe you stay here. Maybe you try the optional tap of your toes towards the floor. And again, this is a challenging exercise. If you feel really wobbly here, bring both feet back down. But it can be quite revealing as to what side needs a little bit more work or support. And this is a look, like I said, at spine stability. So that is different than our core strength. And you could think of core strength like your ability to sit up from the floor. This is more our stability, which means our spines or our core's ability to keep our spine still during certain movements. Good. We'll try 3 more here. And 2 more. And the last time there. Good. Place both feet down if they're not already. To get off the roller here very gently, just roll to your side. And then you can press yourself on up to a seated position. So for our class today, that will conclude our movement-based part of the program. I saw a couple of questions that popped up during class on the chat feature, so I'm going to go ahead and read through those. But if you have any questions, let's take a moment or two to answer them. So let me come in so I can read those a little bit closer. All right. Okay, awesome feedback, guys. Thank you so much for putting that in here, and there are some great questions. Okay, so one of the questions here, this is a good one. I think this is referring to the hip flexor rolling that we did. Is all I feel is bone. Am I doing it wrong? It's a bit painful. So if you're only feeling the bone, it will be uncomfortable, and you don't want to necessarily foam roll up and down over the bone, because the point of foam rolling really is to get into the muscle. So for some people, especially more petite women who tend to be more bony through the front of the hips, that hip flexor rolling may not be possible because it's difficult to get the roller in the right position. Back in one of my classes 2 weeks ago, we went over how to foam roll the quad, which might be a more comfortable option for you. And that would just be doing that same rolling technique, but a little bit lower on the leg. So that's a great question. And I think there are a couple questions in here that sort of address the same thing. So also, let's see, if the calves are really, really tight, is it okay to bend your knees to roll? Absolutely. That can help to take some of the pressure off. You can actually even keep your bottom down if your calves are really, really sensitive. If this is the first time you've done any of that rolling, you can keep your bottom on the mat, and that will help you to take some of the body weight out of your legs. And then as you progress over time, you may be able to continue to put more weight into your legs by lifting your hips up, or maybe even stacking one leg on top of the other. So let me just read through. I will answer one more question here. And then if you guys can stick around, Sean is going to go over how to use the feedback app so that you guys can leave feedback about this program. And I'm happy to answer any other questions that arise. Okay. So this is a great one. On the last exercise we did where you're laying on the length of the roller, do I push my mid back into the roller or keep a curve? Yes, you want to push your mid back into the roller, but not your lower back. So I think it's a common misconception that in order to work your core, you have to press your whole spine down into the roller. You don't, but you do want your mid back. So if you look at sort of the natural curve of your spine, that's what it should look like on the roller, where your mid back would be against the roller, but your very low back, sort of along your waistband, would be left off the roller very slightly. And actually that amount of curve is different for everyone. So the amount of space you have under your lower back is different for everyone. So that is a great